Good morning, church, and thank you for being here this morning as we give God thanks and praise, and as we ask God to bless our quilts, our blankets this morning. We're in the midst of our sermon series, and it's hard to believe. There's only 2 weeks left of Easter. On Friday afternoon, we actually had 2 funerals here on Friday. Pastor Jonathan had the funeral for Becky in the morning, and then I did the funeral Friday afternoon for Howard here in the sanctuary. And our quilting ministry had set these up on Wednesday, and the families loved that they got to see one of the ways that the church lives out our mission and ministry to celebrate diversity and to connect all generations to God's family. That's what Trinity exists for, is to connect all generations, even those we will never meet around the world. And we talked about that even in the midst of death, there is life on Friday. That even though I shared with the family on Friday afternoon, we don't know where these quilts are going, Howard, who was a lifelong Christian, made a profound impact as a business owner and as a community advocate and as a Christian. As a disciple of Jesus Christ, we never fully know the difference that we make in the lives of others. And that's true for the church too, that during these last 2 weeks of Easter, we are reminded that we are not to be people of the past, but rather we are to be a church of the future, looking ahead to where God is calling us. This entire Easter season and the sermons that Pastor Jonathan has shared and that I have shared, if we want to be a church that continues to be vital, that continues to grow, that continues to do the mission that God has for us, it is not looking to the past. It's not looking to the glory days. It's not saying, remember when? But rather being a church that's looking into the future of where God is calling us, right? And we heard that in our gospel lesson today. I don't know if you've ever gone and just read the entire Gospel of John in one sitting. If you haven't, it is it is very easy to do. It takes you like 2 hours to do. But John chapters 1 through 12 talk about the first 30 years of Jesus' life. Literally, the first 12 chapters cover his first 30 years. And then Jesus performs his first miracle at a wedding. And Jesus' mom, right? It wasn't Mother's Day when Jesus' mom says this and says, Jesus, it's time for you to grow up, get out of the basement, stop playing video games, and time for you to go into the world and start to do something, right? And they're at a wedding. And Mary says, Jesus, they're out of wine. Fix this. She knows who her son is. An angel has come and proclaimed what's going to happen in the future to her son after she gives birth, right? And then we have John chapter 13, 14, 15, and 16. That's one night. That all happens on one night. Our gospel lesson is a part of that. In John chapter 14, it is Maundy Thursday. Jesus has just washed his disciples' feet. He has told them that he is to wash the people's feet, to do what he has commanded them to do. He's gotten down on his hands and knees. Judas has now left the dinner table. He's gotten frustrated and walked out. And Jesus gives these words for the very first time in John's gospel. We hear that another one is coming after Jesus. In the NRSV UE, which is what we use here at Trinity, it's translated as the advocate. But in our prayer of the people, you can also translate it as comforter or as guide. That this paraclete in Greek is the Greek term, paraclete. Thank you, Jonathan. It's paraclete and can be translated as comforter or guide or as advocate. And that is good news. It's literally hours before Jesus is going to be turned over and he is going to be tortured and he's going to be crucified. And Jesus is preparing his disciples in what we call this final discourse or his last will and testament. I'm going to send you an advocate who is going to be with you into the future. And remember even though really scary things are going to happen, even though your world is going to be turned upside down, you're going to find yourself in a massive crisis. And you are going to be so afraid and wonder if the entire world is collapsing. You will not be orphaned, because the Advocate will be with you. And I think that's really good news for us, that when it feels like our lives are crumbling apart, when it feels like things are spinning out of control, either on the global stage or personally at home, we have the Advocate with us. We don't know what the church is going to encounter tomorrow. We do not know the challenges that await for us in the future. But the way that we get through those challenges is by following the words of Jesus, of knowing that the Advocate is with us. This Paraclete will not lead us orphaned, and that we are known by God and we are God's holy children, and that God is our loving parent who will not abandon us, who will not leave us forsaken, but will be with us. I love how John says it, or Jesus says it rather, after Jesus was kicked out of the house by his mother. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. Remember, again, when Jesus says to the disciples, what are my commandments? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your neighbor, and to love your neighbor as yourself. That's the commandment of what we are given in John's gospel, that we are called to love. I was teaching confirmation in a previous congregation of mine, and one of the teenagers, who was much more of an extrovert, said, Pastor Fritz, okay, I get this whole love thing. We talk about it all the time at church, but how do we love the people that we hate? Those people that annoy us, the people that frustrate us. How do I love the ones that I just don't like? And I took a second and I said, that's really hard. And if we had the secret, I'd probably be a multi-million New York Times bestseller, right? Trinity might be reading my book at book club on that. And I said, the way that I have found that I live this out with those people who are annoying, who get under your skin, who I don't agree with, who I don't like, the people who I just really struggle with, is that I find myself praying for them. God, I really want you to bless so-and-so, because goodness knows that I struggle to do so. Right? We won't say any names, right? God, I really want you to surround them with your peace and with your love. And that whatever battles that they are fighting, that they know that they are your child and that you love them. Because prayer changes not just them, but most importantly, prayer changes ourselves. That even in the midst of all the frustrations, in the midst of that hate, in that midst of, I can't stand them. Because that's how we follow Jesus. If you love me, you will obey my commandments, says Jesus. It's not an option. If we say that we love Jesus, if we want to abide with Jesus, then we are called to love others. We are called to love our neighbor. We are called to love those who we disagree with, and those who annoy us, and those whom we just really can't stand and maybe even hate. And the way that we do that, is to not to ask God to give us patience, but you can do that, but to say, God, bless them. Help me to see them as the child that you have made them. Surround them with your love. And through not just singing, all are welcome, not just through singing and through our prayers, we'll begin to see God at work in our own lives. I don't know where that confirmation student's at now. I later confirmed them. And I've wondered, where are they at now? How would they answer that question if they've put that into practice all these years later? Because it was like 8 years ago. But I think that's still true for us today as a church. That if we want to see the church be fruitful, if we want to see the church multiply into the future, then we pray for those. We pray for God to help us to love others, to help us to abide in him, and for him to abide in us. That we don't look into the future afraid of what we cannot see, but rather we look into the future with courage, knowing that we have a guide, we have a comforter, we have an advocate who will meet us, who will love on us, and who will love those around us each and every step of the way. That's the future church that we are called to be. That is the future church that we are a part of, and we get the opportunity to help create with the Paraclete, not just today, especially not just yesterday, but into the future. Alleluia, church. Christ is risen. Christ is risen indeed. Alleluia.